Tonight, the DEA is offering $10 million for information leading to the arrest of the Mexican drug kingpin known as El Mencho. He's blamed for a flood of narcotics into the U.S.
Mexican drug lords are some of the most terrifying individuals on the planet. With entire criminal armies at their command and an extensive drug network to profit from, they're not only some of the most powerful men in Mexico, but in the entire world. Most will recognize the nickname of the infamous Sinaloa cartel leader, El Chapo. But few know the drug lord who has risen to the very top of the drug trade in just a few years' time. And he's quickly become known for his wealth, cunning, and brutality. And he's currently Mexico's undisputed drug kingpin, snatching that title from El Chapo himself. This is the story of El Mencho. The man who would come to be known as El Mencho was born Ruben Cervantes in 1966 to poor avocado farmers in the small rural area of Aguila, Michoacan. And the young Ruben's godfather, Nemiso, was close to his heart. And when his godfather passed away, he changed his name to Nemiso to carry on his legacy. Farm work in Mexico is no easy life. Nemiso dreamed of lifting his family out of poverty and enjoying the high life that so many across the border to the north enjoy. His mind was constantly aflame with thoughts of what he would do one day when he was worth millions. But considering that he had to drop out of school at the tender age of 10 to help his 5 brothers and run the avocado farm, the future looked bleak. So how could someone with no education hope to make it to the high end of life? And this is where his road to crime began. For poor, young Mexican men, there's always an alternative. One that calls you when you're at your most desperate. Organized crime. Cartels run the country from top to toe, and their influence is so widespread that many see them as the de facto governments of the regions that they're operating in. With no money in his pockets and no future in hand, Nemiso gave in to this dark temptation. He started moving narcotics through the family avocado business. Soon after, at just 14, he was guarding marijuana fields on behalf of the cartels. The saying crime never pays is one of the biggest lies ever told. Now that Nemiso had a small lump of cash, he decided to cross the border into the land of opportunity, the United States. However, like so many of his peers, the young Mexican wasn't eligible to legally enter the United States. So he used his connections to smuggle himself across the border in the late 1980s. Nemiso lived in the San Francisco Bay Area under a number of aliases. He was later arrested for carrying a firearm, but this didn't deter Nemiso. He began moving narcotics across the border, even entering the meth game, and became a profound and well-known drug dealer in the San Francisco Bay Area. However, his reputation would eventually catch up to him. After a number of deportations and arrests, Nemiso was back in San Francisco with his brother, Abraham. Abraham arranged a meeting with a group of heroin dealers and brought his little brother as a lookout. However, Nemiso could tell that something was up when the buyers paid for everything in crisp $100 bills. This is highly unusual for downtrodden drug dealers. The young man's instincts were right, and the 2 brothers were arrested 3 weeks later. Loyal almost to a fault, Nemiso pleaded guilty to all 3 charges in an effort to prevent his brother from getting a life sentence. He then spent 3 grueling years at a Texas state prison before being released at the age of 30. Now a hardened veteran of the criminal underworld, Nemiso returned to Mexico. He set up shop in Guadalajara and joined the Jalisco State Police. However, don't get it twisted. Nemiso did not change his ways. State police in Mexico are often considered just as dirty as cartel members themselves. In fact, these police often act as puppets for these criminal organizations. His time in the force led to him meeting Rosalinda Valencia, the sister of the prominent gang leader of the Milenio Cartel. The 2 quickly fell in love and married. Now literally a part of the cartel family, Nemiso started as a lowly hired gun for one of the cartel bosses. Little did anyone know that he would quickly rise through the ranks and become the group's most effective and deadly leader. Things had started out well for Nemiso. He quickly established himself as a valuable asset to the cartel and the family. His sharp mind and experience with the US meth trade quickly landed him a leadership position within the cartel. Nemiso was making money and was enjoying the lavish lifestyle with his loving wife. It seemed as if his lifelong dream had finally come true. But the Milenio cartel soon fell into dire straits. By 2009, a number of key leaders within the cartel were caught by authorities. To make matters worse, Nemiso's boss, Nacho Coronel, nicknamed the King of Crystal, was shot dead in an attack led by the Mexican army. It was a complete disaster for the Milenio cartel. The group had lost its top figures, most of its power, and its enemies were determined to see it wiped out for good. Amidst the chaos, Nemiso stood up to the plate and decided to take a leadership position himself. His experience in the cartel and hardened nature earned him the nickname El Mencho, a phonetic play on Nemisio. El Mencho decided that the Milenio Cartel was dead. He formed a new group called Los Mata Zetas, or the Killers of Zetas, a rival group that had attacked the Milenio Cartel. Mencho quickly put down the splinter cells that came from the corpse of the Milenio Cartel. With his rivals defeated, El Mencho changed the name of his group to Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, or CJNG. The cartel quickly spread its influence all around the country. People began to fear the powerful reach of El Mencho's men, and soon, not an ounce of cocaine or heroin passed through Mexico without El Mencho and CJNG knowing about it. Government officials and police officers alike took their bribes, and many rivals quickly fell prey to their brutal tactics. Once this group even shot down a military helicopter with an RPG. This led to authorities quickly placing a target on El Mencho's back. In 2012, they set up a trap to finally catch El Mencho, but his underlings quickly started blocking roads and burning vehicles to draw attention away from their boss. In just a few years' time, the US placed a $10 million bounty on El Mencho's head. El Mencho was officially standing shoulder to shoulder with Mexico's and the world's most powerful and infamous players. But this wasn't enough for El Mencho. He didn't just want to rival the top Mexican drug lords, he wanted to stand above them. And there was only one man standing in his way. Chapter 3, Todo Mexico. It's hard to overstate how powerful CJNG had become at this point, and how quickly it had risen to glory. Its members prowled the streets in military gear with bulletproof vests with the 4 letters strewn across the front. They essentially resembled and operated like a paramilitary group. And this was intentional, with the idea being to scare off any potential attacks from police or rival cartels. They had bases all around Mexico, and were known to all as one of the chief powers in the country. Still, there was another criminal organization that occupied the majority of people's minds, the Sinaloa Cartel, run by the infamous Joaquin Guzman, or better known as El Chapo. The Milenio Cartel had actually been a subgroup of the Sinaloa Cartel, so El Mencho had been working for the Sinaloa Cartel indirectly for years. But the world of organized crime in Mexico is a real dog-eat-dog world. As loyal as El Mencho was to his friends, he understood that he had to fight tooth and nail to preserve his position on the drug kingpin ladder. However, the Sinaloa Cartel had the upper hand. The gang had been around for many decades at this point, and its roots ran deep. And going up against a cartel that had its claws in the very foundation of Mexican society was suicide. So El Mencho decided to be patient. The CJNG continued its aggressive expansion and quickly established itself as one of the power players in Mexico. But he made sure to guide it away from contesting directly with the Sinaloa Cartel. And finally, in 2014, his patience had paid off. El Chapo was captured by US authorities in 2014. And despite eventually escaping custody in 2015, El Chapo was eventually put away for good in 2016. Though the boss could still exercise some level of influence back home in Mexico, the Sinaloa Cartel was dealt a massive blow by the arrest of its most prominent leader. This was a perfect opportunity for the CJNG to strike. El Mencho made his move almost immediately. His cartel quickly spread across all 4 corners of not just Mexico, but the world, setting up operations in Africa, Europe, Latin America, and even Asia. The CJNG started pushing Sinaloa Cartel members out of its turf and quickly became the most feared cartel in all of Mexico. El Mencho's men established in just a few years what had taken Sinaloa decades to build. And today, El Mencho is one of the DEA's most wanted men in all of Mexico, taking the place of the infamous El Chapo. As he reportedly lives a more modest lifestyle in comparison to other drug lords, and has a frightening paramilitary group at his beck and call, chances are good he'll remain a free man for a long time. And one thing about El Mencho is that he knows reputation means everything in the cartel world. A 17-year-old Mexican YouTuber known as the Pirate of Culiacan recorded himself directly insulting El Mencho. It was a grave mistake, one that his fame couldn't keep him safe from. Shortly after releasing that video, the boy was gunned down by El Mencho's men when he was out partying at a bar. This made the Mexican people and the world understand that nobody was safe from El Mencho's reach. But El Mencho had one more card to play to cement himself as Mexico's king, and it would come at the expense of El Chapo. In August 2016, El Mencho's men stormed La Leche restaurant, where El Chapo's 2 sons, Ivan and Jesus, were celebrating a birthday. The men threw Ivan to the floor and kicked him in the ribs, then took the two boys and held them hostage back home. You see, the two were on CJNG territory, and Mencho wanted to make sure that both the Sinaloa boss and the world knew the price for treading on his territory. A staggering $2 million and a substantial amount of drugs was the price for the two boys' freedom. El Chapo reluctantly paid this ransom, and his two sons were freed. But more than anything, it showed that Mencho was now the drug kingpin that the rest of Mexico would be dealing with. Of course, it's hard to gauge just how truly wealthy a Mexican drug lord is, but estimates say that Mencho is worth at least $1 billion, with some estimates going as high as the tens of billions. He stands shoulder to shoulder with some of the world's most affluent elites in terms of net worth, but dwarfs them in terms of notoriety and infamy. And the fear that CJNG instills in people's hearts is worth billions. And with Mexico firmly under the drug kingpin's thumb, who knows what Mencho will turn his gaze to next. So let me know in the comments what you think of Mencho's story. Will his success one day run out, eventually meeting the same fate as his rival El Chapo? Or is he going to stay atop of the Mexican drug game for years to come? Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a massive favor and leave it a like. And if you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to know more about the dark world of cartels and their black market illegal gun trade, make sure to check out my podcast episode with Young Grillo.